Last weekend, I ran the Marine Corps 17.75k, which was my first race of 2024. And today, I want to go over that race with a quick recap, as well as doing an overview of the race course. But before I get into that, I want to do a quick update of how I've been doing with the 2024 run streak, as I'm about to hit 3 months of running every single day in 2024. All right, so last I checked in with my running fitness for the run streak. I was hovering right around the 92.3. In terms of my running fitness, nothing has really changed with the endurance threshold speed or sprint since the last time I checked in, which was that running fitness test. As you can see with my training status, I'm roughly at optimized. So pretty much with my training status, it'll drop between optimized and then maintaining, which is this green side here. And that really just depends on what I'm doing for the day. On days like today, where I did a recovery run for day 89 of the run streak, I ran like a 10 to 11 minute mile, and it's not really going to change the training status much. If anything, it's going to have it drop more into the maintaining. And then days like tomorrow, where I'm doing 10 miles at a faster pace, the optimized or the training status will be more in that like mid optimized. So that's kind of a thing that's always in flux. But the main thing is I always want it to be roughly at the high end of maintaining into the mid of optimized and never really reaching the red, which I don't even know what that is, and I never want to find out. The other thing to note really quick is a quick update of the race predictor. As you can see, the marathon prediction is still a 2:57:21. This again also kind of fluctuates day to day. The half marathon is showing a 1:24, which is not extremely positive considering I'm shooting for that sub 1:20. But one thing I do want to note, if you come up here and look at the 7-day running performance, I'm almost positive that the running performance directly affects the race predictor down here. And if you notice the running performance, there's days missing even though I'm doing the run streak. The 7-day running performance, or the running performance in general with the Coros watch, does not count treadmill runs, and it does not count any run that you do where your heart rate is only in zone 1 for the entire run or the majority of the run. So as you notice today, my heart rate was like, I think, a 110, 111 average for the day. So it did not count this as a running performance. And then Wednesday, as well as Sunday and Monday, those were treadmill runs. And so those were not included as well. And like I said, I'm almost positive that they directly affect the race predictor, which is why this half marathon time has pretty much not changed since I've started my training program. The 1:24:13 has just been consistent throughout. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's primarily because any workout I've done that would improve that race prediction, like my Wednesday threshold run, were done on a treadmill, which is not going to be directly represented in the metrics. One last metric I do want to look at before I jump into the race recap for the 17.75k. If we look at my training status here really quick over the past 12 weeks, the primary thing we want to look at is the base fitness, which is that yellow line in the middle. As you can see, it started off at a 74 when I first got my Coros watch. And then as you can see, tracking over the 12 weeks, we have a steady progression in the right direction of where I want my base fitness to be going. As you can see, there's little deviations within based on different workouts that I've been doing and runs. But overall, we're seeing a trend in the right direction of where I want my base fitness to be going with this run streak, especially leading up to the historic half marathon that I'm training for in May, and then the Marine Corps marathon that I will be training for in October. All right, and with that out of the way, let's jump into the race recap for the Marine Corps 17.75k race. The 17.75k race is done in Prince William Forest Park, so there's actually no way for you to drive to the race. I did see some people running to the race start, and then even after the race, they were running back to like whatever hotel they were staying at. Luckily, the hotel I was staying at was not too far from the Prince William Forest Park, but the only way to actually get to the race start is by riding a shuttle that is provided by the Marine Corps Marathon Organization. And so the shuttle I took was at Grace Church, which is off of Van Buren Road. Again, fortunately, my hotel was right across the street. That wasn't intentional. I didn't even realize that the shuttle pickup was right across the street until I was looking out my window trying to figure out where this church was at. But it was really nice and convenient, especially considering on the day of the race, it was raining all morning. It was already cold. And so knowing that I didn't have to drive too far and be driving all over the place to find this pickup was nice. So the shuttle takes you to a church parking lot, which is basically at the start line. So you start like right on the road which I think is Dumfries Road, what I'm seeing on my laptop here. So you start right on Dumfries Road, basically outside this church parking lot. They had a few tents set up for like information, as well as baggage drop was behind the church. There was a bunch of semi set up for baggage drop. And then, like I said, there was a few tents. Unfortunately, there was not enough tents for people to be under to get away from the rain. A lot of people had umbrellas, people had trash bags. I was wearing like a North Face raincoat, and I stood on the side of the church, like one of the sides of the church, under like the awning to try and avoid as much rain as possible. That still was not possible. I was pretty wet by the time the race started. I think I got there at like 6 a.m. and the race started at 7. So I spent about an hour out in the rain getting soaked prior to the actual race, which was no fun. So then when the race is actually going to start, you all filter up to where the start actually happens. They didn't do a gun start because of the rain, so they just did a 3, 2, 1 go start, which you would see in the vlog if you've watched that already. Once the race starts, you just basically go straight down Dumfries Road until you hit the entrance to Prince William Forest Park. And so now we'll jump into the actual race and go over my race performance in the Coros Training Hub. Let's actually go over the summary first so we can look at that. As you can see, I ran a distance of 11.07, and for quick reference, I did run with the Pace 3 watch, the Coros heart rate monitor, and then the Pod 2. So as you can see for the summary, distance 11.07 miles, activity time 1:17:22. But as you can see, total time, activity time, the exact same. I didn't stop my watch at all during the race. Average pace came out to a 7-minute mile. My best mile was a 6:36. My average heart rate was a 173. Elevation gain was 889 feet. My effort pace was a 6:39. Next, we'll look really quick at time in zones. So as you can see, pace zone, I spent roughly 27% in that 7:13 to 8:39, or 20 minutes, 49 seconds. Aerobic power, I spent 46% in there, so 6:41 to 7:12. Spent about 35 minutes in that aerobic power zone. Threshold, 21%, anaerobic 2%, and then anaerobic power. So anaerobic distance was 2%, anaerobic power was 1%. We'll go to the heart rate zone as well, because that's just as important. As you can see, 60% was spent in that aerobic power, so 159 to 174. I spent almost no time in zone 2, that aerobic endurance, 2%, and I'll explain that in a minute. Anaerobic endurance, 180 to 190, 70%, and then thank God, nothing in the anaerobic power. Perceived exertion, hard. And then training log, I wrote, this race was hard. The hills and rain made it difficult from mile 1 to mile 11, which is very true. All right, so now let's actually get into the race and go through kind of each mile and do a course overview while talking about my race performance. One reason I did not spend much time in zone 2 of my heart rate and in general is that while standing under the church, I didn't really think about that, like, I should probably be getting to the start line. Like, I was trying to stay out of the rain as much as possible, but like it never crossed my mind I should probably get to the start line because it's going to get busy. And then when they were doing the national anthem, I was already kind of like there, but I was trying to move my way forward to get like up closer. But there's a point where like the gates, like the enclosure towards the start line was pretty wide, but then it narrows, like it bottlenecks pretty crazy right at the start line. And so there was a point where like I just could not get any further without being rude and pushing people out of the way. And I did not want to do that. The plan was to go out at like a 7:30 to 8-minute mile. And that plan almost went out the window immediately, partly because I was freezing and extremely wet. And I was trying to get past the group of runners that I was with, because the group of runners I was running with were running at a way slower pace than I needed to. So when I got out of that like bottleneck, so once you pass the actual mats, the chip mats for the start line, it kind of opened back up. And then they had cones along Dumfries Road to stay in. And then there was like a sidewalk as well, if I remember correctly. But either way, the road kind of opened up again. So I had to cut out to the outside of the road. And then I was kind of picking up the pace. And there was also a part of me that like, I was worried that I was going to get caught behind and it was going to mess my pacing up altogether. Because even though I wasn't racing this race, it was supposed to just be like a long run, like a progressive long run. I still wanted to get my paces right because I am training for the historic half. And so as you can see, right away I started quickly, like my heart rate was in the 150s, but immediately it's up in the 160s, and I'm not even that far into the race. I'm 1 minute and 22 seconds into the race, and my pace is 7:31. And as you can see, moving through mile 1, just trying to get my pace down to something manageable while also keeping like everything in control. So I will say, because of the rain and just the way I didn't really think through getting to the front of the start, I kind of felt chaotic through mile 1. Actually, I'll say like the race felt pretty chaotic till like, I don't know, mile 3 or 4. I eventually locked in with a runner, primarily to help slow myself down. But miles like 1 through 3 to 4 just kind of felt chaotic. And I'll explain why. So as you can see, through mile 1, you're basically going up a hill the entire time. So going up Dumfries Road, it's like a slight uphill, and then you turn into the park and it's still an uphill, and then you take a right and it's just more uphill. Like it's just this gradual incline. So that also didn't help my heart rate. And then you get a nice downhill going into mile 1. And it, like, as you can see, mile 1 ends at the bottom of this like hill drop. And then you immediately go back uphill and then down another hill and then back up another hill. And then you do this crazy drop right down going into mile 2. Like you do this crazy run. It's a insane hill, partly because this is all dirt. So all of this right here is dirt, these hills. And there's a lot of like loose gravel, some big rocks that are like jutting out of the race course. I was wearing the Alpha Fly 2s. Like I did not think that part through. I mean, I've never had an issue with the Alpha Flies. And even in this race, I didn't have an issue. Like I never felt super unsecure or like unsafe. But I will say this drop here, this scared me. Like I thought for sure I was going to slide out or that I was going to like twist an ankle or hurt my knee because I was like, had to be so hyper focused on like running this and not falling with the rain. I had my hood on, so that also made everything kind of like more tunnel visioned as well. Like everything felt very, like I said, through miles like 3 to 4, everything kind of felt very like tunnel visioned, just because it was like you kick off, you're going hard, you're going up all these hills. So immediately your heart rate's already skyrocketing. It's downpouring. I'm trying to get ahead of people. My hood is like making it harder to see, you know, like it just felt very like tunnel vision and kind of like hyper focused through these first few miles. You do this crazy drop and then you turn and then you do this gigantic hill, right? And so again, going into mile 2, like you hit mile 2 basically at the top of this hill. So I'm already wrecked and it's like 2 miles in, everything is soaked. And I'm just thinking, I don't know how I'm going to hold this for 11 miles. Like, my plan to like do a progressive long run is kind of out the window. My heart rate is way up there. Like I could tell, you see right here, it's 172 at roughly 14 minutes into the race. And I could tell my heart rate was high. And then from mile 2, basically, as you can see over here with the map, mile 2 all the way to mile 4 is then just this steady incline uphill. I can't remember, at some point from mile 2 to mile 4, it does go from the gravel dirt road to pavement, which is really nice. It was extremely welcome, especially with the rain. And then again, wearing the Alpha Flies. And then even on the hills don't feel as hard with the pavement because you kind of have that consistent, even surface. It was nice to kind of get here and start to lock in. I'm pretty sure here is also where I locked in with a runner, Ryan, I think from Kansas City, if I remember correctly. Kind of started chatting. And I told him, like, I need, like, you're running roughly like a 645, 650. I kind of needed to lock in with someone to help kind of slow everything down and then just like regain my composure, regain my heart rate, my breathing, kind of everything. Cause like I said, it felt chaotic. So I locked in with Ryan somewhere in here and we kind of did this gradual incline, which wasn't too bad. And then at some point too, I know Mark from the Netherlands, who had just moved to DC, was running this race. He ended up joining us as well for some point. You see them in the race day vlog where I say I locked in with some runners and there's the 2 other runners I'm running with. That's Mark and Ryan. It was nice to kind of like lock in with someone. And again, like I said, just kind of have these small talk conversations to kind of get my focus away from like the rain, how wet I was, where my heart rate was at. Kind of like the fact that this race was just like I said, the plan went completely out the window from the get-go. And so it was nice to just lock in with some people. We did get a really nice downhill, and I know for sure this was on the pavement. You get, as you can see, a nice downhill from 4 all the way to, mile 6, before you get like a crazy downhill. So it was really nice. You get this nice paved downhill run to kind of also help regain that composure. Again, this was pavement, so on any other year where maybe it's not raining, I don't know if there'd be a big difference between the dirt part of the race and the pavement, but because of the extreme rainfall, the pavement was very welcome. And at one point, Mark even said, I kind of wish I would have worn carbon plated shoes because I didn't know there was going to be this much pavement in the race. And then you have this crazy drop. Again, this is all on pavement, so that is nice. So you don't have to worry about like rocks or loose gravel or anything like that. But this crazy drop is pavement. And as you can see, you start at roughly 270 some feet. I don't know, 270, 280 feet. And then you end up at 170. So it's like an extremely steep 100-foot drop. And then you immediately go back up another huge hill. And the worst part about this hill is that it kind of goes up. It's like this hill that's kind of just curving off into the distance. Like you can't see the top of it, but you can see it just kind of keeps going. And so it kind of flattens out. And then you have another steep grade to go up to actually get to the top of the hill. And at that point, you've just gotten past mile 7 once you reach the top of that hill. This hill at this point destroyed my quads, my hamstrings, my legs were destroyed by the end of this hill. And then you keep going somewhere in here, like I think it's mile 8, if I remember correctly, like somewhere in this area where you're doing the hill. It might actually be this downhill within this uphill. This is like the last part of the pavement, and then you go back to dirt road. I'm almost positive it's actually here now that I think about it, because what you do is you come up that hill and then you make a turn and you go past this road right here and you go down this like little part of a hill on the paved, and they have cones to split the lane. And so you go down and then you do like a 180 and then you come straight back up. And then you make that right-hand turn to go back into what will be the unpaved gravel part of the road, which finishes out the race. So now at this point, you're back on gravel and you're heading back towards the start of the race, basically the part of the course you've already run. And so again, another uphill. One benefit to it raining as much as it did was by the time we hit this portion of the gravel, so like mile 7 and on, the dirt was so like destroyed. Like it was just mud and standing water everywhere. That helped take away a lot of my focus from the fact that I was running hills. I know I was losing my pace on a lot of the uphill near the end of the race because I was just so fatigued. But having the dirt road like be so uneven and just muddy and hard to get through, it helped distract me because it took a lot of my focus from the fact that, again, I was soaking wet and I was really fatigued at this point, and that I was also going uphill. So again, you have some more uphills as you go towards mile 9. And then as you can see, mile 9, this is where over here, that mile 1 to 2. So that crazy drop and then the crazy hill you do in the beginning, you basically just do the inverse. And so then you do another crazy drop down a hill. I felt a lot more controlled, I'll say, through like this steep decline and then also this steep incline. So like I said, from mile 9 on, you're back on the same course that you already ran. So that's also nice because you know what you're kind of coming into. So I knew that I had these rollers coming. You have one little last like incline before you make the turn. And then it's a nice downhill when you hit that pavement again and you make the right-hand turn to go back towards the finish line. I made a sprint through here. You can see right here that my heart rate, or my pace, not my heart rate, my pace drops. So the green line is my pace. You can see there's that like steep drop there really quick. So one thing that was extremely unfortunate, I pulled out the flag for like the last mile. And this is like one of the first times I've like really thought about what I'm doing in 2024. Like I thought about it when I wrote the names on the flag, like that was really hard. And then like making the first video was really hard, but like doing an actual race where like all of this work that I've been doing is actually going towards something. That was the first time it like really hit me on like what I'm actually trying to achieve in 2024 with this run streak and bringing awareness towards veterans who passed away and honoring those that I served with. So like I'm trying not to cry as I'm like talking about how I love all my brothers dearly and like I miss them. And my race bib had fallen off at some point earlier in the race. And so I was carrying it, and then anytime I needed it for like a photographer or like to show someone that like I'm not a bandit, like I'm actually running this race, I would just take it and I would like stick it to my jacket because it was wet enough that it would just stick to the jacket without me having to hold it. So that last mile, when I hit like the pavement here and like pulled out my flag, I just took it out and stuck it on me and figured like, okay, it'll stick. And so I'm running and like, I'm like, this is for you. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just going to kick it like super hard. I'm like really emotional. And I'm like, I'm just going to sprint it all out for all of my fallen brothers. And like, I'm just going to give it my all. And then my race bib just goes like flying off and like lands on the ground. And so I had to like stop, turn around, pick it up, and then like put it back on. And then I'm trying to like run with the flag. And I was trying to like figure out a way to hold it out because I'd never really thought this through. Like, oh, what am I going to do with the flag in a race? So I'm like trying to hold it out, but it's like soaking wet. So it's like sticking to me. So like a lot of my race pictures, you can see it's just kind of like failing. So like eventually I just kind of like held it and ran with it. But I sprinted out like this last little bit. So as you can see, yeah, like here I'm hitting like the 5s, and I slowly kind of just kept I kind of kept just picking up the pace as I was going. The downhill definitely helped, that's for sure. And then I ended somewhere at like the 4:20 to the end of the race. I did get a notification after the race that like Koros has this thing, like if you run Kipchoge's world record marathon pace for more than 200 meters, you get like an achievement or something like that unlocked. And I got that at the end of the race. So I know that I was running at least a 4:30 clip or more for more than 200 meters. Came in, like I said, at a 1 hour, 17 minute, 22 second time. And that got me 12th overall with a 3rd place finish for my age group. So that is it for my race recap of the Marine Corps 17.75k race. This was an absolutely crazy race. It was probably one of the hardest races I've ever run, while also being one of the funnest races I've ever run. But I had a blast running this race. It was great getting to meet other runners and just be around other people who are just as crazy as I am to want to run this race. I'm so going to do this in the future. Like I said, it was such a great race, and I'm just hoping that the next time I do the 17.75k, the weather's a little better.